It looks like most of the attendees have joined us. So happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us for a really fantastic webinar that's going to cover an introduction to drill through functionality in Power BI. Daniel is one of our senior data analysts on the IronEdge Power BI team, and he has some really great content for you guys. But to kind of start off the webinar, I'd love to give you guys a little bit of background on IronEdge, who we are and what we do. So IronEdge Group, we are a technology consulting and delivery firm based in Texas. We've been in business going on our 15th year now, and we have clients throughout North America. We help businesses all across the US with their Power BI, Power Platform needs. And we like to think that we have a really unique Power BI delivery model. So if you guys really enjoy this webinar and need extra assistance with your business intelligence needs, we'd love for you to reach out to us at sales@ironedgegroup.com. We assist companies with Power BI as a service, where we focus heavily on an engagement that has emphasis on a bucket of hours, where we act as your fully outsourced team, and more or less give you support on demand. So whether it's looking to get that skill set from an outsourced team or just kind of beef up your own initiatives, we're here to help. We also focus on custom training, where we work with your intelligence team, figure out what the strong suits are and where skills might be lacking, and then bring in training that uses your own data. That way you have a really meaningful class and can take those actionable insights back to your day-to-day work. And we also focus on regular traditional waterfall type projects, where we have a defined scope of work, and then we help produce the reports that you need in order to keep your business moving forward. But enough of our sales spiel, time to get into the reason why you guys are here. So I'm going to kick it over to Daniel to go ahead and introduce himself. You guys are in for a treat.
All right, thank you very much, Cassandra. So a little about me. I am a data analyst with IronEdge Group. I am a Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate in Business Intelligence. Essentially, that means I'm very good at Excel and Power BI. I'm one of the co-leaders of the Houston Power BI User Group, and I graduated from the University of Houston with a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Information Systems. Below that, you'll find my contact information. And if you ever need some quick tips and tricks, be sure to check out the IronEdge blog or message me directly, and maybe I can inform you of something that you may be stuck on. But today I wanted to deliver a little bit of insight on drill-throughs in reports. One thing I've noticed through some of our clients is that some people, even proficient developers in Power BI, may have some issues with drill-throughs or some misconceptions about them. So I kind of want to give you a little introduction and provide some context in how dashboards can really benefit from the use of drill-throughs, as well as enhancing a lot of your user stories. So to begin, it's important to understand the importance of analytical journeys / user stories in Power BI. Users of reports interact with the reports in very different ways, and that's what makes Power BI so powerful. Of course, this journey that they operate inside of depends on the breadth of data and visualization inside of the report itself, as well as the variety of pages inside of the report. So the journey a user takes is called a user story. And this comes in many shapes and sizes. For example, some users rely on only a small portion of visuals and summary level pages, whereas some users can take advantage of cross-filtering, drilling down, and exporting to assist with their analysis. This, of course, is all dependent on the training a user has and the considerations taken while developing a report for an audience. And on that point, a user story is only as long as a report is developed. A large report is useless if the content within it is not relevant to the user. So make sure that you are designing user stories that are appropriate for your users and not bloating your reports with a lot of visuals that don't accomplish any insights. So while a successful dashboard or report, I'll be using the two interchangeably for those joining us, cuts down on bloat. Some reports may be large depending on how specific the desired insights are in a large data set that is being analyzed. Most developers are familiar with summary pages where we have several different KPIs and perspectives of data that are boiled down to quote unquote at a glance visuals. Although this is useful for some audiences, there are some users that require the ability to dig deeper into the report and understand why metrics are where they are. To do this, many developers take advantage of hierarchies so that they can use the drill down functionality within the hierarchy and slice the page accordingly. However, if you only have one visualization on a page that shows sales achievement for a salesperson or something like that, you can't get the full picture even after drilling down from a manager to an employee while cross-filtering a date visualization. This is where drillthroughs come in. Drillthroughs can actually lean out a page that is trying to fit too much information by allowing the user to find the specific or new insights with a larger or even smaller context on a separate page. But what exactly is a drill through? So first I'm going to show you the difference between a drill down and a drill through. I commonly hear the conflation between drill downs and drill throughs with not many people knowing the difference between the two. So drill downs are controlled by most users using the drill down mode button found in the visual header of a visual. Of course, it can also be done by right-clicking a category in a hierarchy-based visual. Continuing on, drilling down occurs within a visual itself, meaning the visual itself is being filtered and drilled down upon, also thought of as expanding a category in a visual. Drilling down usually navigates down in a hierarchy, and oftentimes the drill down activation filters a static page through activation. No new visuals are created, but visuals that have a filter interaction with the starting visual will update to a filter for the category distinction that was drilled down upon. However, a drill through typically occurs from a visual. This is an important distinction in preposition because you're not working inside of the same visual, but you are moving to a new page. So a drill through occurs from a visual. It zooms into and reframes a category. It filters the target page that you navigate to through its activation, and it navigates the user to a separate target page. So what can drill throughs be used for? Drill throughs have a lot of uses in reports, but to start off, drill throughs provide new context on insights, meaning a small insight on a summary page can become a focus of a new context with separate KPIs on a new page. They can expand on dense page designs because typically if you're looking at a page designed for analyzing a sales team or a group of locations, you can't get straightforward answers to questions about a specific team member or a location. Drill throughs can single out a team member or a location and navigate to a page that is designed to zoom into a single point of reference. And you can dig deeper into filter contexts, meaning you can zoom into a specific month for a specific person regarding a specific context. This involves the keep all filters option that we will discuss later. Drill throughs enhance user stories by giving them horizontal or lateral movement while conducting analysis. Drill throughs are extremely useful, but implementing a drill through without a reason or as an answer to a non-existing problem statement doesn't add much to a report. They can take your report from this, which is an overall view at a lot of your business, to this, which is a singled out segment view for a specific segment. And this is where we'll begin our walkthrough before we get into our hands-on demo / Q&A. So for our walkthrough, it will contain the following topics. First, I'm going to start off with some data modeling considerations. You can't really take advantage of drill throughs without first getting your data model in order. Next, I'll move on to how to configure a page as a drill through target. Then what keep all filters is and why you would use it or disable it. Some advanced, some stuff that I will not be covering in the demo later on is the cross-report drill through. This is because it is mostly used in Power BI service, and we can't really show you what's going on behind the scenes in our Power BI apps, but I will show you how to activate them and how to get them going. and what you need to be able to test them. Then I'll get into some topics for advanced features, which is the new drill through button, conditional formatting for those buttons, and dynamic destinations with conditional formatting through the use of drill throughs. And although there will be slides representing a lot of the walkthrough for those, we will be covering a lot of that in the Q&A/demo later on. So some data model considerations that you need to keep in mind when designing a report that you're going to be using drillthroughs for is the data model must be optimal. That means you have relationships between facts and dimensions. The data model is properly modeled using best practices, and that your dimensions are meaningful. This means that you have relationships between facts and dimensions properly assigned, and when using the fields to configure your drill through, you want to use fields from your dimension tables. And in a typical data model, this is what your dimension tables are going to look like. They are the tables that describe the facts and where a lot of your category-based data in rows and fields can be found. So how do you configure a drill through target page? Well, it begins at the bottom right of the report view, and the field used is a category or dimension to drill through on. In the visualizations pane, on a typical blank page or a developed page, you'll see this drill through fields box in the visualizations pane. You will configure a page by dragging a field into the drill through field box. And in our example for this walkthrough, we'll be dragging our field segment from the product table. In our example analysis, we will want to get insights on each product segment individually and see how our employees are performing and selling these items in these segments in specific months. After bringing in our field, we will see options regarding the field we are going to drill through on. And also you will see a back button appear in the corner of the page just by simply bringing the field into the drill through field box. This button will act as a button to go back to the previous screen. It kind of acts exactly like an HTTP referrer for those familiar with web design, which is essentially just the previous location a person was, not necessarily going back to a specific page. So currently in this image, the dropdown is set to used as category. This is to denote that when the field is used as a category on another page, the visual that holds that category can be used to drill through to this page. This includes using the field as a category or legend in charts like donuts, pie charts, bar charts, and others. The other option is to allow drill through when summarized, and this is typically when the category is listed in a table or similar visuals. So if you are using summarize, typically you'll have your data in something like this in a table where our segment or product or manufacturer is used. And these would be the fields that you drill upon. So I will keep the explanation as simple as possible for what keep all filters does, and it does exactly what it sounds like. The filters that the drill through will keep include the cross filter context. Basically, whenever you click on a visual or a value in a visual and the page filters according to the selection, this is a filter that will be inherited into the context on the drill through when selected. Other filters that will be kept are slicer selections. Any slicer selection that is active on the page will be inherited when keep all filters is active on the drill through page. Other details in rows. So when you're using summarized, the category when summarized in a table, other factors in the table's row that you are drilling from will be inherited on the drill through target page. This is mostly found when doing a drill through on order numbers to further view order information, or examples similar to expanding a project number, a location, or order number. You're essentially going to be getting other factors like the date next to that order number inside of the drill through context. Other things that will be inherited on the drill through page is the date context, whether date is inherited from a slicer or filter set to the most recent. If active, the date context will be inherited and filter the drill through target page. And finally, any selected value refers to the values above. Look at the visualization pane when testing out your user stories with drillthroughs to see what filters carry over based on interactions. So typically when you're testing out your interactions with a drillthrough, underneath this box, after you've drilled through to the page, will show you all of the filters that are active that have carried over. Usually you want to conduct a lot of testing so that you can ensure that you are inheriting proper filters and not getting any factors removed or added that you don't want your users to be seeing in that drill through user story. So the selection on keep all filters definitely has impacts on how you should design your drill through pages. And moving on to how you should design your drill through pages, designing a drill through page requires a lot of consideration on how a user would arrive to the page. What would they want to see when drilling through on your category? What would they want? Would they want to see KPIs not seen on the page previously? Would they want to be able to dig deeper into specific facts related to the category? Do they need to see similar visuals to the visuals on the previous page? These are things that need to be considered and seen. So unless your users are pros at using the page list for navigation and are aware of how they are moving through the report, do not delete the back button, because it is actually easy enough to make room on the page despite how you are developing the page. Just try to keep it on the left side of the page, because a back button on the right side of the page doesn't make too much sense to a lot of users. Sometimes the filter box where the leftover filters are shown is not enough in terms of conveying to the user what they are filtered on. And I'm talking about the boxes near the drill through field box. It's important to provide visual feedback cards on the page that update the user on what category they use to navigate to the drill through. And it is important not only to the user, but for anyone that they want to share the insight with. It's also possible to provide visual feedback, which is what we call information that reminds the user of the context for the page. These visual feedback signifiers can be as simple as dragging the appropriate fields to a card, or can get advanced with a combination of selected value measures and conditional formatting for not only the text, but also the color of the text, the title of the text, and the background of the visual itself. Very advanced users are able to create drill throughs for two similar categories that should be treated equally and conditionally format the titles to provide accurate visual feedback. And what I mean by that is, an anecdotal example I have is I was making a drill through for, customers in a sales dashboard, and another category that was used for a lot of sales information was partner, who were our corporate partners to that helped with completing a sale. And I was developing this page to get all of this customer information, and I realized that if I were to design a partner drill through, it was going to look almost the exact same. And so what I did was I allowed the page to be drilled through upon by both partner and customer, and I updated these visual feedback cards to read either partner or customer, depending on how the user arrived on that page. And visual feedback is just extremely important, because I know a lot of developers out there have executives that aren't really interested in interacting with the report itself, but would like to get screenshots into their inbox and things like that. So having that visual feedback not hidden away in the corner of the report is extremely useful. So it's also important to only duplicate appropriate visuals from the previous screens. Although in my demo, I'll be repeating a lot of visuals, your drill through can be as simple as a fact-based table showing events related to the category, or it can contain new visuals representing KPIs not in the previous screen. Additionally, it can be duplicate visuals formatted with new values to be appropriate for zooming in on a single category, rather than breaking it out by the category we are drilled through on. And what I mean by this, you'll see an example in our demo, but let's say on our overview page for a report, we have team members broken out in a sales achievement bar chart. Each salesperson is listed with a bar that represents their dollars sold. I may want a very similar visual on my drill through page, but if I'm drilling through on a specific team member, then I would want to see maybe that same visual with categories of products or product numbers even shown on that drill through instead of, our revenue broken out by salesperson. It's then broken out by product number. And finally, on the topic of granularity, I had mentioned that a drill through can be as simple as a large table taking up the whole page in addition to some visual feedback cues. Granularity can also be provided by something as simple as a table or a multi-row card in the corner of a page. And we'll see an example of that in the hands-on demo. So keep all filters as an option is very important to keep in mind when designing drill through pages. The filters being carried over heavily affect the visualizations on the drill through page. Where keep all filters is on, like in a lot of examples in my demo, you'll see I provide visual feedback for multiple dimensions aside from the one that I am drilling through on. I have to keep in mind that the month that is in question from the previous page through a date slicer, and additionally, if I've had a salesperson selected in either a slicer or a visual, I need to provide visual feedback for them as well. Where keep all filters is off, you can typically only provide feedback for the category itself. This is, for example, if I'm drilling through on a product category and I don't have keep all filters on, I'll eventually be seeing data from all time, from the beginning of the data set chronologically to the end, and I'll be seeing other factors that may not necessarily have been active inside of a visual. So it's important to provide that feedback, and you shouldn't forget that you can add slicers to the page that you're drilling through on, and that becomes extremely useful when you have keep all filters turned off. Maybe you want to get a macro view of a product category, but you want a date slicer to be able to slice and dice the data from all time for this product category. Don't be afraid to add new slicers on drill through pages, especially if you are not using keep all filters. And so finally, one of the last things I wanted to show you before I get to the advanced topics and the demos is cross-report drill throughs. So cross-report drill throughs are really a game changer in Power BI. It empowers reporting solutions to an incredibly new degree. It provides the ability to bridge two data sets in separate files together in a user story within the same reporting app in Power BI service. So what this means is, let's say you have two very similar data sets that accomplish two very different reporting stories. But maybe there's a user story that you want to be able to zoom in from one perspective on one report to another in the other data set. There are many times where our active relationships are incompatible between two goals of reporting, whether it's connecting our sales table to specific dimensions in one file and connecting our sales to another dimension in another file. They can now be joined by the fact that the sales table exists in both of those reports. And what that means is, let's say we have two independently operating reports inside of the same app. We can then have cross-report drill throughs to have the user flow in between the two without having to navigate using the page options, and they can then inherit specific context from one report to another. It begins in the desktop report settings. If you open up your desktop settings in the current file category, there is the report settings subheader. And in that subheader, at the very bottom of that section, there is this cross-report drill through button. And what it says is allow visuals in this report to use drill through targets from other reports. I recommend turning this on in both reports that you want to have speaking to each other, because not only will the user want to be able to navigate to another report, but they will want to go back. So the only thing that really constrains your reports in terms of data model is that the two data sets need to have a common table and a common field name, and the name of the table and field must be identical in both sets of the data set. So if we're looking at segment from the product table, then they both need to be product segment in both data sets with the exact same cap sensitive or case sensitive spelling. Cross report drill throughs, the option on the page is found very close to the keep all filters button, and selecting the cross report filter option allows the page to be targetable by another data set or report within the app to navigate to that page. And so once you get your cross report drill through set up very similarly and published into Power BI service, you need to keep in mind you cannot test in the desktop application. To be able to test this functionality, several conditions need to be met. The table, to reiterate, the table and the drill through field must be named the same thing in both report data sets, and the field of the name must be the exact same. And once again, it is case sensitive. Any other differences in the reports are okay, but you only need the similarity in table and field name. Moving on, both reports have the option active in the report settings. That must be active for both reports to be able to communicate with each other inside of the same app. And both reports must exist in the same app workspace in the Power BI service. It's a little bit tricky to get this working even on the workspace level. So sadly, you have to test this functionality with the production level app in Power BI service. But if you configure it correctly and make sure that settings are turned on in both reports, it's not too difficult to test it out quickly and make sure that they're communicating with each other. So just to reiterate how useful cross-report drill-throughs are, for those of you that have been working with very large data sets that have very specific models for specific goals and specific reports, you need to be able to share the insights between those two reports by changing the relationship structure of each report. I've encountered many times where two reports operating on a very similar data set have different relationship structures, and this cross-report functionality allows me to either zoom into specific subsets of the data set or even zoom out into a very large aggregated version of the data set. The possibilities are almost endless, and I think it is really moving towards what Power BI truly can be as a reporting tool. So now I'll move on to the advanced drill through functionality. A lot of this stuff was introduced in the May Power BI feature update, and I'll get through this stuff really quickly because that's what the bulk of the demo is all about. But what it mainly features is drill through action buttons, drill through actions for buttons, conditional formatting for drill through action buttons, and conditional formatting for drill through buttons destination pages. And there's a big distinction between the two of these here because one is conditionally formatting the visual appearance of the drill through button, whereas the conditional formatting in the third bullet there is you are able to define measures to conditionally format the destination page for a drill through button, meaning one drill through button can go to 2 different pages or 3 or 4, and I have an example of some DAX code that will be able to take you to 4 different pages from the same button, depending on how a user is interacting with the page. So just to show what it looks like here for people that are going to be using this PowerPoint later on, the action button or the action menu in the visualizations formatting pane is right here at the bottom whenever you highlight a button. And here are all the options for button actions. And the one we're concerned with is this drill through. So once you select that drill through option, you are then given these options for destination, the enabled tooltip, and the disabled tooltip. And the destination can be hard-coded to a single location, or you can use this conditionally formatting box to connect it to a measure that will use plain text names of the pages to actually navigate to them based on a set of conditions. And the enabled tooltip, that's just what the tooltip will read whenever it is possible to click on the button. And the disabled tooltip is just the text that will appear when there is no target based on a current selection. So the drill through action for buttons, one of the main features that I thought was one of the most important in the May Power BI update is the ability to switch destinations. And I've provided the code for the demo situation we're going to be using. Right now I have 4 options of pages highlighted here. These are the plain text names of the pages in my report that are drill through targets, and using different combinations of selected value measures, we are able to navigate to specific pages based on conditions of those measures. And I'm using a simple switch true statement just to be able to navigate there, and that is what is behind our destination conditional formatting in the demos. And so finally, the drill through action buttons. The full utilization of drill through buttons occurs when you are utilizing the button text options, the text color options, and even border options and fill options, as well as the tooltip options. There's not enough conditional formatting that you can do to make these user-friendly to the user. However, it's very quick, as you can see here, just to start creating a lot of measures for these functionalities. There's technically 3 measures here because this selected value is the same as this selected segment measures. So just for this one screen here, I'm utilizing 3 measures. But this, spelling out of the measures I use is really only useful for those people that want to come back and revisit this PowerPoint. But to really see it in action, I'll begin the Q&A and the demo right now. So if you have any questions, start submitting them based on any of the topics covered in the Q&A box, and I will be conducting a walkthrough/demo inside of Power BI to showcase a lot of this functionality, from configuring a page to getting a lot of those advanced features put in. So without further ado, I will begin the demo. So once again, just to reiterate, you can begin submitting your questions. I will be watching the Q&A box to see if there's anything I can answer while conducting these demos. So in Power BI, I'm going to start with a blank page just to show you what it's like to configure a drill through page from a blank page. So this will be our drill through start, and this is just a normal sales functionality page. We have a lot of visuals for salesperson performance, how many items by segment are sold within our current date context, as well as the sales goal and sales progress. Hidden right here are some of our drill through boxes or action buttons that we'll be using. But for now, the focus I'll be using in this demo is the product segment. So to begin configuring a drill through page, you simply just need to grab the segment from the product table or the field in question and drag it right here into the drill through fields box. Doing so will show what is available in that category, and it will add this back button to the corner of your page. I have seen times where once you have fully developed the drill through page, sometimes if there's a visual occupying the space, it will just go lower and lower depending on how many visuals you have blocking its path to the bottom of the page. But the back button is extremely important, and I recommend you keep it up here at the top left or all the way down at the bottom left. So moving on, the keep all filters is typically on by default, but you can choose to turn it off if you wish. But this is really all it takes to design a configure a drill through page. Just simply clicking and dragging the field into the box, and you now have a drill through target page. To show you that it is possible, this is the configuring a drill through page. I'll go to my start page, and under our drill through options, configuring a drill through is selectable. So that's really all you need to do to configure a drill through page. But to show you some examples that I'm going to run through now to showcase this functionality for the drill through action buttons, I'll show you some of the pages that I've designed. This is a segment drill through for the segment field, and keep on all filters. Keep all filters is turned on this page, and I am providing visual feedback for both the salesperson and month in addition to the segment that we drilled through upon. I have orders, which is my granular data, and I have duplicate visuals from the front shown in a different format. Next, I have a segment drill through that doesn't keep all filters. I'll show you what this is like in a second, but essentially, I'm showing some visual feedback here only because I am able to pick some data based on my selections here, but you'll see that after drilling through on a specific segment like convenience, I am shown data from all time in my data set regarding this product segment. And finally, I have designed a salesperson drill through to show you what drilling through on different categories is like. This one has keep all filters on, and this one has keep all filters off. So we know what it takes to configure a drill through page, but using a drill through is as simple as right-clicking on one of our categories and being presented with the options for pages that we can drill through to. One thing we found is a lot of users of Power BI reports do not actually enjoy clicking all that much. So a button being introduced to begin our drill through journey for some user stories is actually extremely useful, because now all they have to do is click on a drill through button, and you'll see here that I now have my buttons, which I've got two separate buttons here that are doing the same thing to the visual layer, but behind the scenes they're a little bit different. But all I need to do is click on a category, and now my drill through button is active. So if I click on this button after clicking on productivity, I can control click it, and I'm taken to my segment drill through where I've kept all filters. And you'll see that all of my selections from the previous screen are still carried over. I drilled through productivity. I had March selected in my date slicer, and I had the year 2020 selected in the year slicer. And that's visible when I go back to the drill through start page. 2020 is selected, and the month of March is also selected. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that we do indeed have keep all filters turned on for that action button. So if I were to click on productivity, as well as Daniel Waterhouse, and drill through on the productivity segment, you'll see that Daniel Waterhouse is now included in our filter selection whenever we keep all filters going to this screen. And now, using some special DAX, it went from entire team to Daniel Waterhouse as the person I am viewing. So how exactly did I accomplish a lot of this functionality? A lot of it actually takes place through measures and through the conditional formatting options in the visualizations pane. So to start off with the font color and the button text, I actually have two measures that I've used to conditionally format these. And the one for button text is our segment drill through button text. And that is right here. It's a simple selected value being appended to a prefix with the word segment at the end of it. But I leverage variables right here for our selected value. And if our selected value is blank, I just want to return some empty space. But if not, I want to return the prefix appended to our selection and ended with segment, just for more appropriate wording on the button. And that's viewable whenever I click on a category, and I can see that my prefix and my selection productivity are here with segment appended to the end of it. So just by using a simple measure, I'm able to conditionally format the text on my button. Moving forward on the font color, I do a similar thing where if the segment drill through, or if the segment that I have selected is blank, then I want to return white, meaning it'll look, almost invisible on this white background button. But if I have anything selected, if it's not blank in my segment, then I will return the text as black, which is shown right here on the button whenever I have something selected. There are other options that you can conditionally format this with, and you can even change the specific behavior and conditional formatting for the button text and font color whenever it's being hovered over, whenever it's pressed, or whenever it's disabled. I've only done examples for the default state, but you can choose to change any of the options listed in this category dropdown as well. The icon that is being used can actually be conditionally formatted in some cases. And actually, sorry, no, it cannot. It's actually the fill is a new option where we can add images, where if you want to create your own text-based images or icons, you can bring those in and conditionally format them based on some measure definitions. And now, after showing all of these options, I want to show you the difference between these two drill throughs. So this drill through button I have created is only going to the segment drill through, which keeps all filters. However, on this second button I've created, I've added a destination conditional formatting measure that is defined by the alternate destinations measure. And what this measure is doing, I can semantically state, is if I have a selected salesperson and a selected segment, then I want to go to the salesperson drill through where I keep all the filters. And you'll see that this page name is just in quotes, returning to the measure for this specific page. It's the exact same text, case sensitive, for this page. If I have a selected segment but no selected salesperson, then I want to just go to the segment drill through where I keep all filters. If I have a selected salesperson, then I just want to go to the salesperson drill through. And then if all of those other cases fail, all I want to do is go to the segment drill through where I am not keeping all filters. And you'll see that all of these page names exist in our page list. And this is a simple switch statement returning those text values based on the conditions that I've predefined. So in this button, the destination is being conditionally formatted by the alternate destinations measure. And to show you exactly what's going on here, whenever I only select a category on a segment, I will go to the drill through keep all filters page. I have my productivity here, I have March, and I'm viewing the entire team because I did not select any salesperson. And the way this is being, the way I'm conducting this visual feedback is with the selected salesperson title measure. And all I'm doing is I am returning the selected value of the salesperson's name. And if there are multiple results, then I want to return the text entire team. And that measure is defined in this card, giving us that visual feedback for entire team. However, whenever you're providing visual feedback in these drill throughs, you can just drag the field in question. And because even though there is a multiple list of that field, the only one being returned due to our filters being carried over is March. So even though this is technically returning the quote unquote first field in that collection, the only one that will actually be displayed is March. You can see why this wouldn't work too well whenever we have multiple people that we have selected, because if I were to drag name into this field, then just the first person alphabetically will be listed whenever I'm looking at my entire team for this segment. So going back to our alternate destinations, if I were to click on Daniel Waterhouse and the productivity, I am now going to go to the salesperson drill through, which is keeping all filters. And now I'm not returning any, I'm not returning the name of the segment, but it is visible down here. I just wanted to have some visual feedback to show that it is a different page. And we can see that this is a completely different page based on our selections in the drill through start page. And just to walk through the last example, if I was just to click on all of this, or only a salesperson, I will be taken, I will be taken to the salesperson drill through where I'm not keeping all filters, and I'm seeing, because I'm not keeping all filters for Daniel Waterhouse, I am seeing all of his sales over time for my entire data set with every sale in his order, and it is a completely different page from the salesperson drill through, which keeps all filters. So with a single measure that I defined with a switch statement, I am able to return 3 different options based on how the user is interacting with the report. Obviously, there is a lot of potential for this kind of functionality. You know, whether you're looking at all of these orders and you want to drill through on different factors, you would be able to add a button to be able to click on a row and just be able to have conditions that feed into our segments or selections, and we are able to, sorry, I got distracted by the question. Finishing off this point, the button that can be added for a lot of these tables, you can choose to, you know, conditionally format them based on the person's selection. And if you have segments where there is nothing to really drill on to, then you can even hard code situations where a segment is not able to be drilled through upon because there's no reason to. And Sandy, regarding your question, yes, it is a best practice to hide the pages that are drilled to, except in instances where you have a low training situation for a lot of your audience. I find that hiding drill throughs is, you know, really important unless you have them configured in a way that can still be interacted with without any drill through happening. However, almost 99% of the time we do hide our drill through pages because, you know, they're so generally formatted. If I were to go to one of these pages and delete all of the filters that have been carried over, then of course this page doesn't make too much sense because there's just so much going on. And if a user was to navigate to this page without having drilled through to it, then it's just not exactly useful to the user and may actually create more confusion than, you know, and may lower their confidence in the report. So yes, I do agree that hiding the page is a best practice for your drill through pages. And so that example of the alternate destinations for our drill through pages is the last example I had concretely that I wanted to show. Does anybody have any questions about, you know, some of the functionality going on in this report or functionality you don't quite understand when it comes to drill throughs? I'll give anyone the time to type if they need to, but it seems like we are wrapping up because we are approaching the end of our time, and that is, oh, you're welcome. And if there are no questions, I'll just wait about 2 more minutes to see if any questions come in, but I can kind of click around to show you some of the other examples of the drill through functionality that exists here. Right now, I have these 2 different versions of the buttons. I wanted to showcase the ability to hide or show the border, and the same DAX measure that is formatting the color of the drill through button text, this segment drill through button color, I actually have in the border option conditionally formatting the color here as well. So if there is a selection, make it, you know, black. as a border to show it's, slightly more activated. And if there is no selection, just make it white, make it look a little bit invisible. You can match the background color to the disabled state of a button to really make them even appear invisible. And you can still provide a tooltip, but if a user happens upon your invisible tool, button, you can provide to them that this area of the report is used for segment analysis, and you just need to select a single data point from the segment category. All right, and Sandy, the DAX solutions I did provide in the PowerPoint because that will be available after the webinar. However, this PBIX file we cannot share with the audience. But if you have any specific questions that is, using a specific example that I used in this demo, then I'll be able to, share some insights if you just email us or contact us through LinkedIn or something. So we can provide code blocks for the DAX 2 in the recap. Do we have any other questions? All right, I think that about wraps it up for us today. And be sure to look out on the IronEdge blog for the recap of this presentation, and be on the lookout for the blog post that will host this video as well as the PowerPoint that I provided. We can provide some code blocks for the DAX to show how those measures were constructed and kind of why they were constructed. I can put some inline comments for some of them that are a little bit more difficult to understand if you're not a pro at DAX. And make sure to look at meetup.com and search Greater Power BI or Greater Houston Power BI user group. We are still doing virtual meetups from instead of in-person meetups, but you can find more information at meetup.com. Does anybody have anything else to add before we sign off?
No, thank you, Daniel. You did a great job for everyone that attended. We'll be reaching out in the next 24 to 48 hours with a recap blog post. So it'll have the recording of this webinar as well as any other materials that the team wants to tack on. So because you guys registered for the webinar, we'll go ahead and send that out to the email that you registered with.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one.